What you are about to hear will blow your mind and give you six-pack abs without even exercising.
Pull up a bar stool and relax.
Hey, who wants to have some fun?
You've made it to Happy Hour with John Gaskins.
Oh, no. Not again.
Get ready for entertaining local and regional sports talk that will change your life. Or not.
And by the way, when you're telling these little stories, here's a good idea. Have a point. It makes it so much more interesting for the listener.
Here's your host, John Gaskins.
Here's Johnny. Hello! Ah! I'm back, baby! I'm back!
Hey! Happy Hour on a Wednesday. Huge local sports news and Vikings news today. Shannon Pivovar, hired as USD softball coach, elevated from associate head coach 2 weeks after her huge viral moment. Tons of buzz for USD softball. Then her boss, Robert Wagner, got fired. I think in all cases, the Wagner firing, the Pivovar hiring, I think John Schemmel nailed it. A lot of USD fans didn't like some of that. I'll tell you why. It all checks out in a moment. Plus, the Minnesota Vikings' new GM was introduced today, and I don't know if Nolan Teasley is the right guy. He's never been an NFL GM before, but he came from the Super Bowl winner, and it's pretty obvious what his first order of business and what his tenure will be marked by, what that is. And I'll get to that. And Patrick Lally, our publisher, our editor, our knight in shining armor for Sioux Falls Live, used to run the Argus. Election nights or Super Bowls, we had a big one last night in South Dakota, and we're going to go lollygagging. We don't do it often, but we're diving into the news. What he makes of Doden and Roden running off for the governor race, the two mayoral candidates that will run off, and more. We'll head to Orion Pub and talk to Patrick Lally. But let's start with the Shannon Pivovar thing. I think this is going to end up being not only the right hire, it's a popular hire, but man, just name the sport. I mean, if this were college football, what just happened, imagine whether it's local, national, FCS, Big Ten. Head coach takes a program to where it's never gone before. Let's just say it's Matt Rule. He takes Nebraska to the college football playoff. I know, that's funny, right? It's a far out hypothetical, but just follow me. Matt Rule takes Nebraska. He's had trouble at Nebraska. He's taken them to the college football playoff. They won the Big Ten and they're in the college football playoff, and then they win a game there. And then he gets fired. And then they hire Dana Holgerson, his offensive coordinator. That'd be pretty wild. That'd be like, what is going on here? And that's basically what happened with USD softball. So we got to run it back to get to where we are with Piv being the new head coach. 2 weeks ago, Robert Wagner fired, or in other better terms, his contract not renewed. 2 days after he led the Yotes to the program's greatest achievement ever. Not just its first Summit League tournament title and its first NCAA tournament berth in the history of the program. Half a century, Division I and Division II. Never been there. And then the Yotes put a scare in the number one ranked team in the country on their home field in Lincoln. Best team Huskers have ever had. USD's leading midway through the game, lost 4-1. And then the next day they beat Louisville out of the ACC for the first ever USD tourney win. And then even better, they lose. They get eliminated in extra innings, but they get into extra innings off the hit of one of their least used players, 2-run single. And that is when USD softball goes viral because Shannon Pivovar, the associate head coach, is telling the batter, Katie Hoffman, 5th hit all season long, okay, over 55 games. I'm so proud of you. That's the moment, right? So much goodwill harnessed for what had been kind of a dormant, nothing, no man's land softball program until the last couple of years. And really, this year until the last couple of weeks of the season. They just got hot. They won at 10 of 15. They started 10 and 29. They weren't much. And then here they are. they just explode. And then you fire the coach? You thwart the momentum? That's odd. And I was not quick to judge. Certainly crazy timing. But man, did I read from so many USD fans, social media, and then I was in touch with some of them. I think I got a decent sample of the fan base that cared about softball and what happened here. And of course, you know what a lot of the reaction was. Why would you do this? What awful timing. Why can't we have nice things? How embarrassing. John Schemmel is hurting the brand. He's getting in his own way. He forced out Bob Nielsen into retirement. He hired a guy that was there for 1 year. He just wants to hire his own people so he can impress who's ever hiring him next. And then he starts blocking people on Twitter who are defending Robert Wagner. Yeah, so a lot of that is true from the fan base. Sample, not everybody. But in these situations, it's such an incredibly just heavy and fast and furious circumstances, the success, the viral moment, then the firing. It's a lot to process. Maybe give it a couple days to process. So I tried to connect dots. And look, Schemmel ate a lot of crap for this. He bit a lot of bullets. But 2 weeks later, he hires the coach. I think whether you agreed with the Wagner firing or not, he hired the coach I think most wanted him to hire to keep the momentum of this program going. It's never been more successful. It's never had a better moment. And Shannon Pivovar joined our show to talk about that viral moment not too long ago. She said this helped the Yotes recruiting. People that would never have reached out to USD about playing softball there, well, now they've seen them on the national stage, more so on social media than ESPN or ESPN Plus or whatever network they were on. The millions of views of Shannon Pivovar being the pillar of positivity in coaching in a day and age when there's so much NIL, there's so much angst, there's so much me from players. And you see this, and that's what it's all about, right? And so it kind of feels like you got to hire the one that had the momentum to keep the program, keep the players, keep the recruits going. Don't take down something that just started to become a good thing. And I agree with all that. That is the right hire. But back to why the position was open in the first place. I was able to grasp from trusted sources that a lot of players were happy with Wagner's dismissal. So perhaps something was percolating underneath before all the big Summit League tournament and NCAA regional success was happening. And I'll just put it in general terms that I think I feel safe saying, without dispute, there might have been a culture problem in USD softball. And mostly the culture between the head coach and a lot of the players. Okay? It wasn't a Shannon Pivovar culture problem. So, I mean, if it was an entire culture problem, then you wouldn't hire somebody who was already on staff to take over. And, well, yeah. Also, Robert Wagner, to that point, had an underwhelming record. Things didn't start elevating in the program until Shannon Pivovar came on board. They were 70 games under 500 in the Wagner era. And this was, hey, David Herbster and John Schemmel gave him some patience. Good for them. Everyone understands it's hard to win in the Summit League in baseball and softball because we're way up here in the Dakotas and the weather's terrible and that affects recruiting. And you play your first 30 games on the road. We hardly play any home games. We get it. You get a lot of grace with your record. SDSU baseball did that with Rob Bishop, paid off in his 10th year, finally. They finally won the Summit League. But the program was not ripping it up. It got hot with a hot pitcher. Softball is pitcher-oriented in Madison Evans. And then we also saw what was best about the programs besides Evans in that Katie Hoffman hit. Shannon Pivovar was elevated to associate head coach after her first season. She was an assistant for 3 years. Associate head coach. Robert Wagner saw something in her. She had been fired as USF's head coach 3 years ago, and Wagner said, we need you in softball. I know about you. I know your reputation. I know your ability to connect with players. We need you. And so here is Shannon Pivovar, and this is likely the biggest reason why she's been hired as USD's softball coach. This is from Happy Hour after her big viral moment. 2 weeks ago, May 18th.
I want to know their stories off the field. I want to know how they're doing in classes. I want to know what they're looking forward to in their futures and their goals and all of that stuff. And at the end of the day, that's why I coach. 1,000% is because I believe that building people up and building those relationships and doing that is going to outweigh the wins and losses at the end of the day. Do I want to win? Yes. Am I super competitive? Absolutely. But going to weddings of players that I coached 10 years ago, getting text messages that they are pregnant and expecting, that stuff to me is so much more fulfilling than remembering a win 10 years ago.
You grasp it pretty good there. She said early in her career, when she was an assistant at SDSU, when she was the head coach at USF, she's young. She's far more concerned about wins and losses. And the relationship aspect about it, much more important. And that is a sign of maturity and growth. She's grown a lot. She's grown a lot since she was USF's head coach and when she was the Jackrabbits assistant coach. By the way, Shannon Pivovar was a part of the staff and had only been on the staff briefly, a couple of years, for both the Jackrabbits and the Yotes, both programs who had been middling forever. And in Division I had really struggled. And common denominator, Jacks and Yotes, first ever Summit League title and NCAA berth. Shannon Pivovar on the staff. Not a coincidence. So she's grown, she's matured, she's a relationship builder, a culture builder. It appeared that anything that was good in that culture was Shannon Pivovar. And that you don't get hired because of a viral moment. That's not what anybody said. You shouldn't hire Shannon Pivovar because she got really famous for something really positive. That shouldn't be enough. But she's clearly qualified with the success and the experience she had at SDSU and at USF as a head coach, at USD. She's been here for 12 years in this region, Southeast South Dakota. So she's had success as an assistant. She has put in time as a head coach, and she knows the recruiting ways of the place. But good things happen to good people sometimes, and it's a culmination of their work, not just some sort of fluke from the universe. And so here is Piv talking about the thing she was most famous for, that viral moment.
I think what's crazy is I wasn't doing anything that I don't normally do. I'm not used to the TV cameras. I'm not used to that. Like, we're lucky that our games get streamed on the Summit League network when we play. But like the ESPN level, that was new to all of us too. So I simply was just through the roof ecstatic for Katie in that moment. And I knew all of the emotions that she had too, but like, darn it, I was so darn proud of her that she stepped up and figured out a way to tie that game.
So there you go. John Schemmel knew all this before Shannon Pivovar's big moment. He keeps a close eye, a close watch on all his athletic programs, as is his job. So just a wild guess. I don't know this for sure, but connecting the dots, it's that he wasn't sure in the first place as a new athletic director if it should continue under Robert Wagner. Good softball man, lots of knowledge, part of 8 College World Series teams and 2 national titles as an associate head coach at Arizona State. But was it really clicking at USD? You get a long leash, but there appeared to be players not happy. You shouldn't fire a coach because players are unhappy. To what extent or why they were unhappy, what kind of grounds this was to not renew his contract, I don't know. But he assessed the situation. There weren't a lot of players that spoke out about Wagner being fired. Good sources tell me they were happy to see him go. And it appears there's a lot more support for Piv's hiring than there was anger for Wagner's firing. It all adds up. Now, I have seen some USD fans not happy with this hire because it seems lazy, because it's from in-staff. It's a lazy hire. Or you might go ahead and bang her 4 years of head coaching experience. She was 4 games under 500. Yeah, that was at USF, which, just like SDSU and USD, doesn't win a lot of games. They're not going to bowl you over with 40 and 50 win seasons playing up in the North, for playing and recruiting in the North. And USF, they're playing and practicing at Sherman Park, a Sioux Falls public complex. I did their PA for many games. And now they're out at Sanford, which is a much nicer facility. They don't have their own softball practice and playing facilities. 2 blocks down, you have Augustana, who's won a national championship and about 14 times over regular season and Northern Sun tournaments and trips to the NCAA tournament. 2 blocks down, they've got their own field. It's first class. You know, Greta Melstad, she just got the Minnesota job. Like, USF is a tough softball job, probably tougher in the Northern Sun than USD is in the Summit League. And she was 500. That's a lot of wins for USF. She coached over her skis as a 20-something first-time coach. And she probably learned some lessons along the way. And then Robert Wagner felt like he had to hire her. She creates a culture. She was heavily involved. She was in charge of player development, recruiting coordinator. And as she said in our chat with us, Robert Wagner empowered her, putting the associate head coach label, to do a lot of blue collar, down and dirty, grimy, nose to the grindstone work of the program. And what did that amount to? Eventually, back-to-back Summit League tournament championship round appearances, the big breakthrough win, and then an NCAA tournament win, and then the moment we all saw. And yes, you don't hire her because of a moment. But what that moment did, which was, again, a culmination of Shannon Pivovar's coaching and who she is as a coach, that has helped elevate the culture and the success of USD. Here's what that did for recruiting in 48 hours' time, millions of views.
I think this is a piece, and it's a big piece of this story, but we're having kids reach out and say, I saw you on TV, I want to be part of it. And that hasn't been a thing before. Wow. So I do think that the social media stuff that's getting out there, the ability for us to play in a regional on that stage and get the coverage that we did is going to go a really far way in terms of just getting the University of South Dakota softball's name out there. So I think that's kind of the biggest step in terms of the program.
So there you go. I hope now it all makes sense to you. It's not a lazy hire. It's the right hire. They had something good going. You hold on. You keep what was the best of it, and you subtract what was the worst. And again, it sounds like Robert Wagner was a really nice guy, a really knowledgeable softball man, did the best he could, invested himself in the Vermilion community. I don't know exactly why his contract wasn't renewed, but yeah, I think I've just added it all up for you in the last 15 minutes. It all appears to be the right decision from what I've learned and from what we know about Shannon Pivovar. Going on to the Minnesota Vikings. Quite a week and quite a last 24 hours in Vikings land. For one, Jason LaCanfora, NFL insider, longtime CBS, now with a different company. He claims J.J. McCarthy wants a trade. He wants out. He's not the golden boy anymore. He was getting all the reps, all the attention, and got hurt. And he thought he wants out of Minnesota now that they've brought in Kyler Murray. Okay, you have that going on. Of course, the Kyler Murray signing a month ago was a big bombshell. And then the Vikings went out and they hired a new GM. And his name is Nolan Teasley, and he was introduced to the Minnesota Vikings media today. Right-hand man to the owners. Right-hand man to one of the best GMs in the NFL, John Schneider. Seahawks won 3 Super Bowls, made 3 Super Bowls, won 2 of them. And they won those 2 12 years apart. 12 years apart. And, they went from Russell Wilson. They had to turn things over, and they eventually land on Sam Darnold, coincidentally from the Vikings. And, you had the Pete Carroll, Legion of Boom, all that. Seahawks, one of the most respected organizations in the NFL, and he was the right-hand man. Okay, that's good. And so he was introduced to the Vikings media today, and look, he was polished, he was vague, he was generic, he was all business. He didn't get into specifics about McCarthy and Kyler Murray. very buttoned up press conference. I saved you a lot of time by watching the whole 24 minutes. But two things stuck out to me from his remarks and through Mark Wilf, the managing owner's remarks today. One, Kevin O'Connell clearly has a huge say in personnel. Is he actually the GM? No, they said Nolan will get the final say on personnel. Nolan Teasley, right? But Kevin O'Connell, for the first time, and unlike the last time with the hiring of Kwesi, he was a part of the process of hiring the GM. And he's going to have big input in the personnel decisions with Teasley. Twice, Teasley said it would be his job to make his draft, the free agency decisions, and who hits the field, who starts, particularly at quarterback, based off the coach's vision for the players. Coach's vision for the players. He's going to work with the coaches. And it's not just KOC, it's Brian Flores, who's basically the head coach of the defense and would be a head coach in the NFL if he wasn't suing the NFL. He's one of the best. So Teasley wouldn't address J.J. McCarthy and Kyler Murray specifically, nor would he, when asked, talk about specific situations in evaluating the quarterback spot when he was in Seattle. But he did say this regarding the quarterback role with the Minnesota Vikings.
As I was raised in this league, the quarterback and the head coach are the two most important people in the building, and so we're going to build our operation and our foundation around supporting them so that they can be the best versions of themselves at all times. In terms of managing, that we're going to rely on the coaching staff, but I think the goal from the outset of the offseason was to build a deep and competitive quarterback room, and I think that was executed.
Is Captain Obvious? Sure. We all know quarterback and head coach are the two most important people in the building. But it's vitally important for a GM to realize that this is his first task. If that's it, he knows you got to nail this. You got to get this right. And that's the best thing we know so far about Nolan Teasley. First job, figure out the quarterback. So let's do that. And look, let's go. Let's call the Minnesota Vikings what they are. They're a pretty darn good, well-built automobile. They've got a sleek design. They're sturdy and they're safe. They've been crash tested and it's safe. Plenty of horsepower, the wide receivers. Hardly any dents in that thing. All the little things are there. You got a decent fuel system, a top 5 defense. You got a decent transmission that gets the wheels going. That's the offensive line. Your ECU, your head coach, your head coaches, elite staff. No one doubts all that. It's just one problem with this mighty fine automobile, one of the best in the NFL. The engine doesn't work too well. Car can't get out of the garage. The quarterback is the engine. And when you consider that you have a 5th-year head coach with a great record, but no playoff wins, you have a top 5 defense. That's what they were actually ranked in the top 5, almost everything, rankings, PFF, you name it, and maybe the best defensive coordinator in football in Brian Flores. You're in one of the deepest divisions in the NFL, one of the most competitive. You're in the more competitive conference. Rams just added Myles Garrett. Seahawks won the Super Bowl. 49ers always there. You have the best wide receiver in the NFL, one of the best wide receiver duos, and with the latest draft pick at receiver, one of the best trios right out of the gates. You have to win now. This is not, you need a veteran, proven quarterback, and that's not J.J. McCarthy. You can't do the pet project. You tried to work on the pet project. He got hurt a lot. That didn't help him, but we all saw it. J.J. McCarthy was the 29th ranked quarterback in the NFL by PFF. We saw the stumbling and bumbling, the 5 wins in a row to end the season. We all know that was against papier-mâché defenses. It didn't really develop him. And this is not the Jets. These are not the Panthers with Sam Darnold. This is not wait and see. You got 5th-year head coach, great defense, great receivers. Offensive line needs work, but it's not one of the worst. It's middle of the pack. You can't screw up the quarterback, and Kyler Murray's a far better option, and I think we all know that. And by the way, the Seahawks, I know Vikings fans want to lament, Woe is us. We always have the bridge quarterback. We always have the quarterback on his second or third stop who has a history of injuries, and that's what Kyler Murray is. And oh, by the way, he might be a rent-a-quarterback. He's only on the hook for 1 year. Why can't we ever get it right in the draft? Why can't we ever develop? Why are we always stopping us? It doesn't matter. Everything is there for the Vikings to win big, but they need all they can have, especially the most important position, quarterback, just to make the playoffs when you're in a division with the Packers and the Bears and the Lions and a conference with the Rams, Seahawks, and Niners. And the Seahawks won the toughest division in the NFL last year with the Rams and Niners right there, and Kyler Murray on the worst team with Sam Darnold as the quarterback. Well, what's Sam Darnold? He's a late 20s quarterback with a history of struggling and being a journeyman quarterback in the NFL who played on mediocre to bad teams, whose coaches and offensive system and offensive line often failed him. Gee, that sounds like Kyler Murray, and now the right-hand man of the GM of the team that just won the Super Bowl brought Kyler Murray into the Minnesota Vikings. It just might work. But it feels like if the Cantor reports are true that McCarthy wants a trade, okay, now he's entitled. He hasn't performed well enough. You make the trade? No, you need depth. That was clear from last year. McCarthy got hurt. Wentz got hurt. You're going to need those guys in the room. But Kyler Murray is your guy, and all eyes are on, number one, how Nolan Teasley hires the quarterback situation this year and moving forward. It either gets the Vikings finally to a Super Bowl or gets him and Kevin O'Connell fired within 2 or 3 years.